I mean, Martin Luther King didn't even believe in violent protest. He believed in peaceful protest.
And then, Brandon, you made the mistake of bringing up MLK. Full quote, "But it is not enough for me to stand before you tonight and condemn riots. It would be morally irresponsible for me to do that without at the same time."
Hey guys, Alf here. Been a while since I made a video, but I found something really hilarious and it kind of inspired me to make this video, because when I find really funny things on the internet, I want to share them with people, right? Isn't that usually what people want to do? But there was this debate recently on Elijah Schaefer's channel, Slightly Offensive, where he had Vosh and Hunter Avallone debate Brandon Tatum and some other guy. I don't really know who he is. Apologies to that guy, but he didn't really say much about the debate anyway. And this isn't really about the debate. This is just about a clip that Hunter Avallone himself posted on Twitter and clipped out a part to say, as you can see on the screen, recently Vosh and I debated a conservative panel. Here are some of my best moments. Check out the full thing on my channel. Now, what makes this extra hilarious is that he thinks this is a best moment. He thinks he had this massive gotcha. I showed you the clip a little bit in the intro, but I'm going to show you the full clip now, and it's the exact same clip that Hunter posted on his Twitter.
I mean, Martin Luther King didn't even believe in violent protest. He believed in peaceful protest.
And then, Brandon, you made the mistake of bringing up MLK. Full quote, "But it is not enough for me to stand before you tonight and condemn riots. It would be morally irresponsible for me to do that without, at the same time, condemning the intolerable conditions that exist in our society." Brandon, the fact that you're a former police officer honestly terrifies me.
Well, let's let Hunter finish.
I just think that it's very clear that you're misinterpreting MLK to support your own dumb conservative agenda, when at the end of the day, MLK made it crystal clear that the way that you fix rioting is by addressing the underlying systemic issues that lead to the civil unrest that lead to rioting.
Didn't riot.
There were
I didn't
riots
say
during
he
the civil
rioted.
rights.
Stop, please. I'm glad. Are you?
Now, I'm probably not the only one laughing at this moment. You all probably are laughing too, but just in case you don't get the situation, you're not laughing, let's analyze what's being said here, right? Brandon Tatum is making a claim. He's claiming that Martin Luther King was against violent protest. So Hunter wants to debunk that claim with a quote from Martin Luther King. But as he starts reading the quote, the first line and the first couple of words of the quote is Martin Luther King saying he condemns rioting. He is not for rioting. He's explicit. He says the only thing he is saying is that it's just not enough for him to be against rioting, because he's also against the reason why people are rioting. So he's saying he understands why these people are rioting. He understands why they're going towards violent protest, but he doesn't accept it as a valid way of protesting. He's saying it's not enough for me to condemn it. I do condemn it, but that's not enough. I also have to say this, right? You can have both. They're not mutually exclusive contexts. But but in the end, like for me, I'm against vigilantism. Now, does that mean that it's for every situation? I would not say it's not enough for me to say I condemn vigilantism, but you know, I understand the reason why these people are going out and taking law into their own hands, right? There's some cases. I remember there was a case in, I think it was Miami, where some guy kidnapped the son. He was a karate instructor, and he kidnapped some guy's son, took him to a hotel room, and did all types of nasty things to this kid, right? Horrible, horrible things. So they arrest this guy, they find him, they arrest him, and they have to transfer him from where the state he was in back to the state where they're going to prosecute him. And as he's landing in the airport and he's going through the airline, the father was there with a gun. He snuck up and shot the guy and killed him. Now that's vigilantism. I condemn vigilantism, but I can 100% understand that man's frustrations, why he did that, why he, you know, maybe he didn't have faith in the justice system, blah, 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 blah. There is ways to explain and understand the reasoning of a person and understand why they would do a certain thing. But that doesn't mean that now we should accept vigilantism, and now we should say, no, yeah, people should be allowed to take the law into their own hands. That's a bad move. This is why we had lynching. This is why lynching is gone now, and we don't do lynchings, because people would take, I don't mean lynchings by, like hangings that the law used to do. I mean like a community getting together, seeing a crime and grabbing that person, and then doling out their own community justice. There's a reason why we don't do that. There's a reason why we have due process. We're against vigilantism, but that doesn't mean we don't understand why it happens. That doesn't mean that things can happen that we can say, yeah, I totally get why that guy took the law into his own hands. I could totally get that. Therefore, for that situation I gave of that father, I would say it's not enough for me to condemn vigilantism, which again means I do condemn vigilantism. But I also, it's not enough for me to say that without also stating that I am against what that guy did to his son. What I'm saying? I'm against what that karate instructor did to that small boy, which was the reason why the dad went to vigilantism. I condemn both those actions. This is the same thing Martin Luther King is doing with this quote. There was a riot. He saw the riot. He understood why these people were rioting. He understood that they were frustrated and felt unheard to the point where they felt they had no other choice but to lash out physically. You know what I'm saying? But Martin Luther King was against that. He's saying that in the quote he's reading. In fact, there's a key phrase in the quote that Hunter's reading, and he even emphasizes himself. And it's at the same time. So he's saying, at the same time, I condemn rioting. I also understand the frustrations that caused this rioting. And this is why people are rioting, because of this frustration that's happening. But that doesn't mean that he accepts it. You know what I'm saying? So when he's using this as a gotcha against Brandon Tatum to say that MLK was against violent protest, that's not true. In fact, that quote cements that he's against violent protest. He literally says it in there. He says it's not enough for me to condemn violent protest. He's condemning it, but he's saying in this situation, I can't just condemn it without also condemning the things that are causing these frustrations, that are making these people act out in this way. He would prefer they act in a different way, because as I'll read later, we'll see that Martin Luther King was very much against violent protest, and in fact calling it immoral. Now, Hunter didn't realize that what he was saying was at the same time. At the same time. Meant that he condemns both. I have no idea, but, I guess he's just not very bright. So Hunter completely bumbles that up, hilariously. He says Brandon Tatum's misinterpreting the quote, but it's really him that's interpreting quote. Brandon Tatum didn't even bring up a quote. So how would he know that he misinterpreted any quote or anything? He found his own quote to misinterpret and said that Brandon Tatum was interpreting that quote, which Brandon Tatum didn't even bring up. Complete bullshit. He just playing a game here, really. And then he says that Tatum misinterpreted it over some
dumb conservative agenda,
which makes no sense. It's not a conservative agenda to be against rioting. In that case, we would have to say then that Martin Luther King was conservative because he was against rioting. He says it himself in the quote Hunter reads. So it's not a conservative agenda to be against rioting. It's a silly thing to say that. If he was misinterpreting something, then show him the misinterpretation, but don't say it was because of the
dumb conservative agenda.
It makes no difference whether you're conservative or liberal. You're probably going to be against rioting. Tons of people are against rioting, regardless of what side of the aisle they're on, or the situation. Some people are for rioting depending on a certain situation, regardless if you're on the right or left or conservative or liberal. You know what I'm saying? Like, people have different views on this. It has nothing to do with those lines, with political lines. But also, he goes on to fanfic his way through this quote that he just read by Martin Luther King and say that Martin Luther King was explicitly saying, and he says he clearly states that how to fix rioting. And nowhere in that quote does he say how to fix rioting. All he says is, I understand what's causing these people to riot and I condemn that thing, but I also condemn rioting. That's what he's saying. To say that someone else is misinterpreting it and then you misinterpret it, and then on top of misinterpreting it, you add information into it and straw man Martin Luther King and put a reason, what he was saying behind what he was saying. utterly ridiculous, makes no sense. And I think the most priceless thing is that Hunter lacks the self-awareness to not post this as his best moment from the stream and not realize how much he bumbled this situation. And he posts it thinking he did a great job. Like, how funny is that? That's why I had to make this video, because it's so funny to see this guy lack this much self-awareness, or anyone lack this much self-awareness in public like this, and then come off so smug as if they, like, won that situation. They totally made an ass of himself. So I'll read this to you just to leave this out on this. Martin Luther King was against violent protests, and here is the proof of that, where he wrote in 1964, he had a lecture when he won the Nobel Peace Prize, and he accepted his award, and he wrote a lecture for when he, received it, and it was called The Quest for Peace and Justice, Martin Luther King Jr. He said, "Violence as a way of achieving racial justice is both impractical and immoral. I am not unmindful of the fact that violence often brings about momentary results. Nations have frequently won their independence in battle, but in spite of temporary victories, violence never brings permanent peace. It solves no social problem. It merely creates new and more complicated ones. Violence is impractical because it is a descending spiral ending in destruction for all. It is immoral because it seeks to humiliate the opponent rather than win his understanding. It seeks to annihilate rather than convert. Violence is immoral because it thrives on hatred rather than love. It destroys community and makes brotherhood impossible. It leaves society in monologue rather than dialogue. Violence ends up defeating itself. It creates bitterness in the survivors and brutality in the destroyers." Right? So far, totally against it. In a real sense, nonviolence seeks to redeem the spiritual and moral lag that I spoke of earlier as the chief dilemma of modern man. It seeks to secure moral ends through moral means. Nonviolence is a powerful and just weapon. Indeed, it is a weapon unique in history, which cuts without wounding and ennobles the man who wields it. I believe in this method because I think it is the only way to reestablish a broken community. It is the method which seeks to implement the just law by appealing to the conscience of the great decent majority who through blindness, fear, pride, and irrationality have allowed their consciences to sleep. The nonviolent resistors can summarize their message in the following simple terms. We will take direct action against injustice despite the failure of the governmental and other official agencies to act first. We will not obey unjust laws or submit to unjust practices. We will do this peacefully, openly, cheerfully, because our aim is to persuade. We adopt the means of nonviolence because our end is a community at peace with itself. We will try to persuade with our words, but if our words fail, we will try to persuade with our acts. We will always be willing to talk and seek fair compromise, but we are ready to suffer when necessary and even risk our lives to become witness to truth as we see it. So I leave that in closing, and we see how Martin Luther King was against violent protest. What he was saying was he condemned rioting because he didn't see that as a viable way of protest. He thought, in fact, he's like he says in the quotes, it was immoral. He finds it immoral. He finds that even if you succeed through violence, that it's not going to fix the problem. It'll make it worse afterwards, and it'll only be a momentary solution. And you'll look like a barbarian, and the others will look like, they suffered in a horrible way. But you'll look like a barbarian. That's what he's saying. It's a terrible look. Whatever he believed in private, whatever. But publicly, he stated he was against rioting. He was against violent protests. So I just thought I'd bring you guys that hilarious moment. It was really fun. I couldn't help but laugh at that tweet so much. And I thought if it brought me joy, it might bring you guys joy. And it wasn't that hard to dunk on him. I mean, he said it in his own quote. I didn't even need to show you all these things. You could have just heard his own quoting of Martin Luther King and seen that he dunked on himself. Well, but that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you laughed as much as I did. And I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Peace.